the Capitol Beltway, the Atlanta Perimeter, the Hampton Roads Beltway, among many others. Ever since travel by roadway was a thing, ring roads have been there right along with them. Not even just here in the Americas, but one can find ring roads all over the world. In Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and even Australia. Ring roads seem to be an integral part of the roadway network of many major cities around the world. Cairo, Rome, Moscow, Beijing, and seemingly every city in Texas, along with many, many more. But why? Why do so many cities love building ring roads? What is their purpose? Are they a good thing? Or are they bad for traffic flow? In fact, many cities that were unable to build full ring roads due to geographic or developmental constraints have still attempted to build partial ring roads around their cities. On this video, we're going to take a look at them. So let's go ahead and get into it. First off, what is a ring road? At the core, the simplest definition of a ring road is one that goes around the core of a city and allows traffic to avoid the city center, effectively a ring around the city. By this definition, a ring road does not necessarily need to be an interstate highway or controlled access freeway, but a surface roadway can also qualify as a ring road. The roadway doesn't have to be a normal circular shaped route either. As you can see in many locations, the ring road might have an irregular shape due to some sort of geographical constraint or an effort to bypass existing developed areas. Here in the United States, ring roads are a relatively modern thing. In the early 20th century, most roads just went directly to and through city centers. Then around the 1940s, bypass routes started to become more popular. You can still see the evidence of this era in many cities with the U.S. highway system, specifically in cities without interstate access. For example, in Culpeper, Virginia, you have US 15 Business, which was the original highway through the city. A later bypass route was built to the east that is now US 15 bypass. Or up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, we can see where the original US 131 was and what is now US 131 Business, and a bypass route later constructed to the west. So up until that point, you could find bypass routes around tons of American cities, both large and small. Around the 1960s, as the interstates were being built, full ring roads began becoming more popular. Several major cities around the country were slated to have full ring roads, often called beltways or beltlines. As we can see, some did get their beltways as originally planned, while some couldn't quite get it done. Other cities that grew to become larger cities later decided to build a ring road or are still in the process of trying to build a complete one. A good example being the recently completed Greensboro Urban Loop around that city in North Carolina. While some others decided or tried to build multiple ring roads around the core city. Houston, Texas is noted for having 2 full ring roads and a third nearly completed one as a far outer loop. But those are just some of the interstate level ring roads. You can also find ring roads around several cities in the country that aren't controlled access. Places like Dothan, Alabama, where Ross Clark Circle is a surface arterial route rather than a freeway. And while Houston has 3 freeway loops, Texas is notable for the number of cities that also have surface arterial loops, similar to the one seen in Dothan. Tyler, Abilene, Paris, and many more can be found in the Lone Star State. Now that we have a little background info on ring roads, let's talk about some of the benefits of them. The biggest benefit of ring roads, and the reason that they're usually built, is to disperse traffic. To understand this, let's take a look at Indianapolis, Indiana, which has a full beltway known as Interstate 465. Looking at the map here, we can see that 4 interstate highways cross in the area: I-65, I-69, I-70, and I-74. I-65 and I-70 intersect inside the beltway, while I-74 and I-69 run concurrently with it until reaching the other side of the city. By I-465 existing, through traffic that will otherwise enter into the core city, the most densely populated part of the metro can instead travel around the city through less dense parts of the metro area, reducing the overall traffic burden on the core city and instead redirecting it to suburban areas. To go a step further, some areas such as Atlanta prohibit large trucks from entering inside the beltway unless it is for local deliveries. This further increases mobility in the core city, as larger vehicles mixing with cars usually generates even more slowdown and congestion. If you look at the old bypass style routes, which simply provided a mostly parallel route for the main highways through traffic to avoid the city, the ring road is like a supercharged version of that. You can think of a ring road as a sort of force field around the city. As all roads converge towards the center, a bit of traffic is peeled off at the ring road and instead travels around it, reducing the overall traffic burden on the core city. The effectiveness of a ring road as far as a viable bypass for a particular route is not always guaranteed, however. For example, in Denver, I-25 is the main north-south route through the metro area.
while C470 and E470 function as parts of a ring road around the city. However, due to how far out E470 swings to the east, it never really is a viable alternative for I-25 through traffic that wishes to avoid the core city of Denver. Even in traffic, it's almost always faster to just use I-25, not to mention E-470 being a toll road. Another benefit of ring roads is the mobility and connectivity for outlying areas of a metro area. Most ring roads are located in metro areas that have a traditional concentric layout, a more dense, urban, developed core city, with lower density and mostly sprawling areas in the outlying parts of the city and suburbs. The ring road provides connectivity between these suburban areas, allowing for an easier trip between them. In the absence of the ring road, in many cases, drivers would use the mainline interstates to go into the city and back out to the next suburban area over. A good example of this is when I lived in Charlotte before Interstate 485 was completed. If you wanted to go from the University area to the North Lake or Lake Norman area, you would take I-85 southbound towards downtown and then get on I-77 northbound to head back up to Lake Norman, which further adds traffic to the core city that would otherwise just stay in the suburbs. For a more interesting case of where this still occurs, we can look at Atlanta. Atlanta actually does have a ring road known as the I-285 perimeter. However, the metro area has sprawled so far north that its developed area now reaches far beyond the old perimeter highway. As a result, if one wants to travel between Atlanta's northern suburbs, it can often be faster to drive south to the perimeter and back up north to the suburban city you are trying to reach. Then, of course, this adds more unnecessary burden onto the perimeter highway. When an area has grown as far beyond this original ring road as Atlanta, an additional ring road would be the most effective at dispersing traffic, as the old ring road becomes more of a route for local traffic traveling within the metro than dispersing traffic around it. Metro areas such as Houston and Raleigh-Durham have built multiple ring roads for this reason. Surface arterial type ring roads are most often used for that purpose. Loop 323 in Tyler, Texas is a good example of this. The area around the loop is almost entirely developed, and it has plenty of traffic lights. So Loop 323 ends up functioning as a ring road for connectivity between outer parts of Tyler rather than a bypass route for dispersing traffic, though minor dispersion can still somewhat occur. So we have all these reasons to love ring roads, but of course, I have to also give you the bad. The biggest criticism around ring roads are new development and sprawl. Now, depending on who you ask, that can actually be a good thing. New development means more tax revenue for local municipalities, but critics of ring roads will say it's the type of development that it brings. Since ring roads by nature typically run through outer, less developed parts of the metro area, they are usually accompanied by low-density, sprawling types of development. Think large subdivisions, cul-de-sacs, and winding residential roads, with all your favorite big boxes and other retail found next to the ring road itself. Ring roads are where you are usually guaranteed to find your Targets, Walmarts, Home Depots, Costco's, and such, with large parking lots filled to the brim with SUVs driven by good old American soccer moms. The American dream, if you will. Also take a look at your home metro area. I can almost guarantee that most of the prominent shopping malls in the area are within close proximity to the ring road or bypass highway around the city. In Charlotte, there are 5 malls in or next to the city limits, and all but one of them is along its ring road, Interstate 485. Very rarely will you find any dense or walkable neighborhoods near these ring roads. So if you're looking for density, ring roads do the opposite. They are a major catalyst for inducing suburbia around your city, and Americans do love their suburbs. But for critics of suburbs, ring roads can be a problem. And even then, sometimes it's not just the suburban style of development, it's the development period. There are and have been some cases where smaller towns simply do not want the ring road to bring any changes to their area. Another downside of some ring roads is that they do not perform their original purpose of dispersing through traffic around the core city, at least not effectively. There can be many reasons for this. One is the number of exits. One way for ring roads to perform effectively as a bypass route is to limit the number of exits. If you look at most congestion along American highways, it is not necessarily a case of overall capacity, but instead poorly placed or designed interchanges that result in large amounts of weaving from traffic entering and exiting the roadway. A good example of a roadway with several poorly placed interchanges is Interstate 25 in Denver. In Denver, I-25 just west of downtown between US 85 and I-70 is riddled with several interchanges and major arterials merging into it one after another. As a result, you'll often see traffic backed up onto the main roadway from people attempting to leave the highway, weaving with all the roads trying to merge into the highway. So I-25 in this part of the city ends up being congested all throughout the day, even beyond peak hours. And though I-25 is not a ring road itself, when ring roads are designed poorly like I-25 in Denver, they end up slowing down long-distance traffic and can end up being just as congested as the routes that go into the core city. And this is usually because developers want as easy access to the ring road as possible. and most cities are not going to turn down the possibility of new revenue. Another cause for ring roads not serving as good bypasses can be the routing themselves. When the ring road swings too far from the city or has a very irregular shape, it can be faster in many cases to just use the main highway through the city. For this, we can look at Interstate 275 in Cincinnati, the longest interstate beltway in the country. In Cincinnati, the biggest bottlenecks and congestion lie along Interstate 75. And despite I-275 existing as a ring road, it simply swings too far out of the way for anyone using I-75 to ever consider it as a bypass. And the same goes for I-71 in the area. So I-275 ends up mostly serving suburban commuters and other local traffic. Most long-distance traffic will travel along I-71 and I-75 directly through the city instead. And the last thing that reduces ring roads' effectiveness as bypasses can be when they are too close to the core city. A good example of this is Interstate 440 in Raleigh, North Carolina. I-440, when originally constructed, was a decent bypass to get traffic around Raleigh, whose ultimate destination was elsewhere. And back then, Raleigh was a sleepy, small capital city. But as the metro area has boomed in recent decades, I-440 has become just another local highway. The city has outgrown the Beltway in all directions, especially to the north. Now, North Carolina did recognize this early on, and a new outer ring road, known as I-540, is under construction and almost completed today. Now, with the purpose and disadvantages of ring roads understood, some state DOTs have implemented measures to try and minimize those disadvantages. One common measure is tolls. When the ring road is tolled, it can discourage or slow down the sprawl that might come if it were a free roadway. Usually, motorists will avoid a toll road unless it provides a significant travel time advantage over the alternatives. This effectively reduces the amount of local traffic using the ring road and keeps it as more of a roadway for long-distance traffic. A good example of this is Texas 130 in Austin. If I'm traveling locally around the Austin area, then I'm likely going to avoid using Texas 130. But if Austin is simply a place in the way for me getting to a further destination like San Antonio or the DFW, it might be beneficial to use Texas 130 to avoid I-35 through the city. And Texas 130 has very little sprawl or development near it, at least for now. The other measure to keep a ring road as a more functional bypass is to limit the number of exits. The biggest catalyst for development is access. So it is rare to see large amounts of development near a highway if there is no interchange to access it. Limiting the number of interchanges also prevents bottlenecks caused by too much merging traffic, making the ring road far more effective at moving long distance traffic. Now, most ring roads in the US don't limit the number of exits because everyone wants an interchange close to them. But a good example of a highway with limited exits is the New Jersey Turnpike. It combines both tolls and limited exits to quickly move traffic along the most busy roadway in the country and into the massive New York City metro area, and does a pretty good job of it. But officials do have to be careful when using tolls on ring roads. Ultimately, the ring road is still competing with the existing routes through the city for travelers. So if that ring road is not significantly faster than the through route, then many would avoid the tolled ring road for the free direct route. And then going back to Austin, this is one of the issues that plagues Texas 130. As it is sometimes only marginally better than I-35, or the tolls are too high to be worth it to most people. But this can be offset by using something called dynamic pricing, where the cost of the toll road adjusts depending on the congestion. The tolls are priced low enough to encourage use of the ring road, but not high enough to where motorists will prefer the main roadway through the city. But the problem comes into play when private entities own some of these toll roads, and the goal is profit rather than actually improving traffic flow. And now that we know all about ring roads, let's briefly take a look at some failed attempts at building them in the US and what the effect has been. First, we'll start with Atlanta. Since you guys know, I just love talking about Atlanta. Earlier, I mentioned Atlanta as a good example of a second ring road being needed. Well, the officials in Georgia seem to agree. In the Atlanta area, an outer perimeter highway has been proposed and attempted over the years, multiple times. Initial proposals call for a full outer perimeter around the area, similar to the Sam Houston Tollway in Texas. The proposed perimeter would have roughly followed this corridor, connecting the city's numerous northern suburban areas. Proposals for said outer perimeter were discussed as far back as the 1960s, but it wasn't until the 1990s that the state began making attempts at its construction. By the turn of the millennium, Atlanta had grown and numerous suburbs exploded north of the city. At this point, the building of such a roadway faced large amounts of resistance from people both inside and outside of the perimeter, as well as environmentalists. A scaled-down northern arc was also proposed, but suburbanites north of Atlanta also opposed this measure. No surprise there. And as of today, you can see Georgia DOT making incremental improvements and widening to Georgia 20, like a sort of scaled-down northern arc. If we look at Atlanta here in 2024, we see that despite not building the outer perimeter, the sprawl came anyway, and it continues to come in droves. Single-family homes, cul-de-sacs, and big box stores continue to pop up north of Atlanta. Even now, people as far north as Forsyth County complain of growth and traffic issues facing the area. As far as roads in the area, it is some of the most poorly planned and designed that I've seen. The cities and towns up here look like they just let the developers do whatever they want with no real strategy or long-term thinking as far as mobility. Another failed attempt at building a ring road was in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., the metro area commonly known as the DMV. Everyone knows about the I-495 Capital Beltway, but there was actually once a proposed outer beltway. In the DC area, as far back as the 1960s, there was a proposal for this outer beltway. Said beltway would have passed north of Rockville on the Maryland side and included a new bridge over the Potomac River, a common bottleneck today on the existing beltway, as all traffic between Montgomery and Fairfax counties must drive down to the beltway to cross between them. Due to overwhelming resistance, this beltway was never constructed. However, on the Maryland side, you can see part of the route was built as Maryland 200. So unlike Atlanta, DC did get a part of its outer beltway built. Maryland 200 connects I-95 and I-270 north of the current beltway and is tolled. So it has been somewhat effective at reducing travel section of the current beltway that it parallels. Though I could see it being far more effective if it were extended out to US 50 in Prince George's County, as most traffic in the DC area travels east to west. The southeast portion between US 50 and I-95 doesn't seem that it would have been very effective at dispersing traffic and would have instead been used for local travel, so they could probably do without that part. Virginia and Maryland plans occasionally call for some parts of the outer beltway alignment to be built, but as of today, nothing has come from it.
All right, guys, that's everything on ring roads, what they are, some of the advantages, some of the disadvantages. Overall, I'd probably say they're a net positive. The only real downside is the sprawl, but even then that can kind of vary because if you look at Charlotte, North Carolina and South Charlotte, the area just exploded when they built Interstate 485 in that area. But in the case of DC and Atlanta, when they did not build those outer perimeters, well, they sprawled anyway. So it can kind of go either way. But let me know what you guys think. That's all I got, and I will see you on the next one.